Have you ever had that gut feeling that someone's petty nonsense is about to backfire spectacularly? That's exactly what I felt one morning when I decided my mailbox, yes. My unassuming rural mailbox would be the final casualty in a bizarre little feud that had been brewing for months. I might not hold a world record, but if there's an award for the most mailboxes destroyed on one property in under 6 months, I'd be a top contender. Trust me, this story ends with a wrecked HOA truck, one humiliated enforcer, and the most indestructible mailbox in the county. Let me set the scene. I live on 30 acres of rugged, dusty Texas land at the edge of a place called Willow Creek Estates. Don't let the fancy name fool you, it's more tumbleweeds and mesquite than manicured lawns. But because some developer slapped estates on it, we're stuck with an HOA, and not just any HOA ruled by the self-appointed king of pristine fences and neutral paint swatches, Harold Vance. Harold's the kind of guy who retired early from a desk job and decided to become the dictator of suburbia. Picture a man with a perpetually red neck, an overblown sense of power, and cargo shorts with more pockets than allies. His chariot? A hulking, faded beige F-250 with amber flashing lights and community patrol unit magnets plastered on the doors. He called it the CPU. We called it Vance's vengeance vehicle. And that man hated my mailbox. It wasn't because my mailbox was an eyesore or falling apart. No, Harold just didn't like me. I skipped HOA meetings, didn't show up to their waffle brunches, and once told him I thought mailbox height rules were pointless. That was enough to put a target on my back. It started small. One Wednesday, I went to check the mail and found the mailbox door bent, the flag snapped off. I figured a delivery truck or maybe the garbage crew clipped it. Annoying, but accidents happen. A week later, the whole thing was obliterated. Tire tracks across the ditch told the tale. Someone had floored it right over the shoulder and smashed it to bits. I replaced it, this time with a steel box instead of aluminum, and sank the post deep, reinforced with concrete. It lasted 9 days. When I found the third mailbox mangled, with a telltale streak of beige paint on the corner, I knew. I didn't want to believe it, but I knew Harold and his beige battering ram were to blame. So, I did what any fed-up, formerly civil guy does. I started gathering evidence. Photos, dates, measurements. I even bought a cheap wildlife camera meant for catching coyotes and mounted it across the road. Low-res, terrible battery, but it worked. 2 weeks later, jackpot. Grainy footage showed Harold's truck veering suspiciously toward my mailbox before driving off like nothing happened. It didn't catch the hit itself, but it was close enough for me. I confronted him at the community board meeting, where he was busy lecturing some poor soul about approved flower pot colors. I held up my phone and said, "Harold, we need to talk about my mailbox." He squinted, smirked, and brushed me off. "Just looks like a truck driving," he scoffed. "Your truck?" I shot back, same time my third mailbox vanished. I pointed out how it looked like he was swerving toward it. His face turned red, chest puffed up. "If your mailbox wasn't practically in the road, maybe it wouldn't keep getting hit," he snapped. Then he said the word that lit the fuse, flimsy. Now, I've spent my life fixing heavy equipment, building sheds, welding broken hitches. I know how to make things last. Hearing that petty tyrant call my work flimsy like it was some kid's craft project, well, that was it. That night, I pulled out my sketch pad and pored over every line of HOA and USPS code. Turns out, mailboxes need to be accessible and maintained, but nothing says they can't be fortified. No rules about maximum durability, just vague suggestions about breakaway posts. So, I got to work. I designed what I later called the Guardian, a 6-inch steel well casing sunk 4 feet into a trench, buried in a ton of concrete. On top, a reinforced steel box, double-welded with internal ribs and a 1/2-inch steel flag that wasn't going anywhere. I painted it plain black, rugged, unassuming, unless you knew what it was. My neighbor, Tom, a retired mechanic and chronic complainer, stopped by during installation. He took one look and said, "Buddy, that's not a mailbox. That's a damn fortress." He wasn't wrong. For 10 glorious days, nothing happened. Harold drove by a few times, slowed down, probably sizing it up. Then, on a Tuesday morning while I was weeding at the end of the driveway, really just waiting for the show, he came rolling up. Same routine, slow crawl, eyes on his clipboard, then the familiar right drift. Only this time, wham. It wasn't a crunch. It was a clang, like a tank hitting a vault. His truck's front corner crumpled, airbag deployed, steam hissing from the hood. The Guardian? Not a scratch. Maybe a scuff. I strolled over, feigning concern, phone recording. You okay, Harold? I asked. Looks like you hit my mailbox. He looked like he was trying to solve quantum physics while being stung by bees. That thing's a hazard, he yelled. You set me up. I kept my tone calm, almost too polite. Harold, this mailbox is 100% USPS compliant. Same spot as the last three. You know, the ones that got wrecked. Neighbors started gathering. Tom was grinning like a kid at a carnival. Harold called the sheriff. Deputy Larson arrived, measured the post, watched the footage, and after hearing both sides, turned to Harold. Sir, this looks like a single vehicle accident. And the object you hit? A legal mailbox. He handed Harold a ticket for reckless driving right there, in front of everyone. But I wasn't done. I sent a packet to every HOA board member. Photos of the smashed mailboxes, the footage, and a letter from my cousin, a lawyer, making it clear I'd sue if they tried to retaliate. Harold spun it as community sabotage, claimed I'd built a trap. But the board had had enough. Turns out, I wasn't the only one sick of his antics. They stripped him of his patrol duties. The HOA refused to cover his truck repairs, and at the next election, Harold didn't even run. Word is, he quietly sold the F-250. No one's seen those amber lights since. My mailbox. Still standing. People slowed down to snap photos. The mail carrier gives it a little pat every delivery. Says it's the most famous mailbox on her route. Looking back, it wasn't about the mailbox. It was about standing up quietly, stubbornly, with a lot of concretito, a guy who thought the rules didn't apply to him. It showed the neighborhood that some fights, you win by not backing down. So what's the pettiest power trip your HOA's ever pulled? Or have you ever had to outsmart a neighborhood nuisance? Drop your story in the comments, I read them all. If you enjoyed this tale of mailbox revenge, give that like button a solid tap and stick around.